Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and really thrilled that you're here to join us on this journey today. Thank you all for all the love and support that you guys continue to provide, and we hope you continue to enjoy the shows, and feel free to let other people know about the Paranormal Portal. We've got an epic show for you guys today. I am welcoming Mr. Gene Harrison to the show from New York State, and he is here to discuss his experiences with both Dogman and Bigfoot. He's been dealing with these things for about a decade now, and he's got some great information. So buckle up, we're going in. Hey, Gene, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today, brother.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I love the fact that you've not only experienced one thing, but you've experienced, well, two things. Generally speaking, people have a Bigfoot experiences or a Dogman experiences or series of them, but you've got both. So this must be a pretty incredible area,
huh? So far it has been, yes. Yes.
I got to ask you, so before you had these experiences, were you a believer in this phenomena? Were you at least open to it, or were you a skeptic? Where did this start?
No, I was always a believer in a lot of things, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Yeti, all that stuff.
Sure.
But like most people, I always thought, because it was drilled into our heads, that Bigfoot is only in the Northwest.
Yeah.
So I always thought that until I got a tip that they're not.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I mean, that for me was an incredible revelation as well. That, I learned from Leonard Nimoy and In Search Of that there was a creature in the Pacific Northwest called Bigfoot. And then years and years later to find out, well, they're pretty much everywhere. There's Bigfoot claims in every state except Hawaii in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
That's just bizarre. So you did have an open mind. And so how did all of this begin for you?
Well, my oldest son has a friend who occasionally sleeps over at the house. And he stayed over one weekend, and my wife drove him home, and he lived, she took the back roads. I live out in the country. It was probably half an hour to get him home. And this is a kid that, over the years, I found out that he wanted to go to seminary school. So the kid is not a liar. And he told a story, or my wife mentioned she drove past the street. And she said to him, "See that street right there? There was supposedly there was a Bigfoot sighting there years ago." So the kid that doesn't say much turned to her and said, "Mrs. Harrison, they're real." And that, piqued her interest. So he decided, he further told her the story about he lived in a rental house with his family, and behind a rental house was I call it a gas cut. It's like 100-foot clearing for the buried gas lines. So if you cross over that, there was an abandoned house. And then beyond that, there was another abandoned house. Then there was just woods. So the youngest son and him used to go to the first house and play basketball because they left their basketball hoop there. And one day they were over there playing. Mm-hmm. And they were facing the second abandoned house, and a ball got away from him. And he went over and picked it up. And as he stood up, he saw this thing behind a tree. And I went over and measured. It was 40 feet from where he picked up the ball to where this thing was. Mm-hmm. And they were both looking at each other at the same time. So he saw it, the younger brother saw it, and the creature saw them. And they all ran different ways.
Oh my God.
So I called the father and I said, "Can I come over?" That's how I know about the 40 feet.
Sure.
And got more info. And I said, "Listen, that house is abandoned, but how do you feel about me putting up trail cams?" And he said, "Go right ahead." So I did that and probably sat out there 6 months or so, and I got nothing. Nothing except maybe his father getting on camera by mistake a couple times.
Sure.
But I went on a map after 6 months of nothing, and I found the area near there where the biggest area of vacant land was. And there was a park. Believe it or not, it was a park. And it was only like a half mile from a town. So I said, I'll go check this out. So the following day, I went there, and it was in January. I went there and I parked the car and I walked, and there were trails all over. And then there was a straight cut. It was a power line cut. Something told me to take the power line cut. So I walked probably a mile on a power line cut. I got to the end. It went right and left, the power lines. But something told me to go up the hill, and there were trails up there. They said, go, whatever it is. I've always listened to that little voice in my head. In my career, it helped a lot. So I went up the hill and I went into the woods, and I followed my thoughts of which trail to take. And I probably walked another 3/4 of a mile on this trail. And I got to a little, like a hill, where the sun could come through the trees and it had melted the snow. And then at nighttime came, it refroze. But right in the center of that, I found 2 footprints. One was 17 and one was 14.
Oh, wow.
But only one print apiece. So I was there frozen, like I couldn't believe it. That was the biggest footprint I've ever seen. So I took a picture, I sent it to my wife, and all I heard back was, wow. So
Yeah. Wow.
I went back to the car. I went home, and she said, can I go with you tomorrow? I said, yeah. So we went back the next day, parked in the same spot. And she didn't walk 100 feet toward the power lines, and she found a 3-toed. I didn't measure the length, but it looks like it's about 15 inches. But it was 3-toed.
Oh, wow.
Very odd. So I took pictures, and then I scribbled it out so nobody else would see it. So we walked that day, and nothing else happened. But over the years since then, I've been going up there and, move my trail cams around to see where I get the best footage, if any. And a lot of times I didn't get any. So I'd move the trail cam somewhere else. And then there's one set of footage I have on the camera. I always kept it like 2 years because it looked like there were bicycle reflectors in the trees.
Oh, wow.
It's just a daytime shot. When the sun would go through the leaves, you'd see bicycle reflectors, it looked like, light up.
Ooh.
I said, I like to know what that is, but I had no idea. So like 2 years went by before I did anything about it. And I sent it to this lady I met. And she sent it back probably 3-4 hours later. She said, what you got there? You got yourself a Bigfoot. And my wife and I looked at it, and I said, I don't see it. So I went to bed. Like we usually go to bed early. Next morning, I got up and I looked at it closer. And I stared at it for a while. And I said, I do see a figure. I said, but that's not a Sasquatch.
Ooh.
It looked like a dog, a black dog, standing in the trees. And I looked closer. I found 2 other dog men. And behind these dog men, maybe 10, 15 feet, in a tall tree, sitting up on a branch, was a juvenile Sasquatch. So that's the first time I saw them together. So I knew they were up there then for sure. So I've been going back and forth for years, and a lot of times, well, until September 2022, a lot of times I'd be up there and saying, it's wasting my time because I'm getting stuff on a trail cam, but it's, like for example, I said at one time 15 feet high up on a tree, and something came up in front of the camera, but it was so close that the whole image was whitened out. But I could see the shape of the head, cone-shaped head, no neck, and massive shoulders. And you can see his arm reach over. So I know they're up there. So time went by, moved the cameras, you got this and that, not much that people would believe anyhow. But one day I walked I call it Area 2. I parked the car and I walked to Area 2, and I took the winding trail across the footbridge and then up and around a hill. And when I got to the top of the hill, instead of following left and staying on the trail, I crossed over through the little bit of woods to the power lines. So what I surmised happened was the watchers that were watching at Area 2 watched me leave Area 2 and went to a different area. So they kind of relaxed themselves, I guess. So I went to Area 3, I guess you'd call it. And I turned around and I came back another trail on the side. I went up on another little hill. And I just sat up there for maybe an hour or so. And all of a sudden I was looking around, all of a sudden I saw something which I thought was a hiker walking down the trail, all dressed in black, head to toe. And the reason why I thought it was a hiker was I said, it was all black, but the bottom of his feet were light colored. So to me, it's like, is he hiking with brand new Keds on? I couldn't explain it in my head. But when it walked, it was like, I referenced it to watching somebody ride a bike on the road past you. There's no up and down. It's just gliding like that. And I saw it short enough, but time that I saw the leg bend. Because the foliage covered it in some spots, but I saw the leg go up. And that's how I saw the bottom of the foot. So I told my wife, I said, it had to be a hiker. It had to be. So I don't know how much time later, we watch all these, a lot of them are dopey shows on Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And one lady was telling about an encounter, and she said, the damnedest thing was the bottom of his feet were white. And I looked at her and she looked at me and I said, I don't think I was a hiker.
Right. Yeah.
So I went back, I did the same exact thing again. So I'm up on the hill this time, and I hear a man and a woman walking the trails. I couldn't see them, but I heard them. And I could hear them because they were talking the whole way about where they were on the trail. Now they crossed the footbridge and they walked up the winding trail. They went to the top and they turned left. I could hear them. And as they faded out a little bit, I just happened to turn and look at that footbridge, and I saw the same figure run over the footbridge.
Wow.
Like towards them to keep an eye on him.
Uh-huh.
I said, it's either the same one or that's his brother. Looked just like him. And it was like, again, it was all black. So.
That's amazing. Wow. Now,
that was the first two.
Yeah.
That was the first.
So,
yeah.
I got to ask you, in that picture that you saw the canid faces, and then back the juvenile Bigfoots allegedly on the branch, were they looking at the camera like they were looking at it like, what the hell's that kind of thing? Okay,
yes.
so
they were hiding from the camera.
Wow. Yeah. That's.
And I guess the juvenile Sasquatch was either too young to care,
mm-hmm.
or I thought he was far enough away where I couldn't see him.
Wow.
It's clear as day.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting take that you saw the white souls, or the light colored souls anyway, in contrast to the fur and stuff, because if you watch the Patterson Gimlet footage, the bottom of Patty's feet are very light in comparison. Yes. And that was a bright sunny day. And mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that's a definite consistency for sure. Very powerful. Wow.
Well, I'm sure that Patty's feet were full of sand, but still they were light.
Right. Yeah, they're much lighter than her dark coat, clearly. I don't know if it's coat or hair or how would you describe it, but yeah. So that is a strong consistency. Now, did you have a lot of foreknowledge about these subjects prior to these experiences, or you said you were open-minded, but were you already really well-versed in what people talk about in terms of both of these phenomena?
No, to tell you the truth, I thought Dogman was something that somebody made up because mm-hmm. maybe Sasquatch was getting too saturated.
Right.
So somebody came up with the Dogman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I thought, anything is possible, but I thought it was probably a bunch of baloney until I saw it.
Yeah.
Tends to change your mind.
Yeah, that's hard to ignore that evidence right in your face for sure. Were you surprised by the fact that they were in close proximity to each other? Because traditionally, most references to Bigfoot and Dogman is very adversarial by a lot of people's claims that if they're in one area, the other one isn't there, and they're in a different area. I mean, they might have potential territories, but generally speaking, they don't seem to commingle. But what you were witnessing was they were definitely in close proximity. Was that a surprise to you?
It was, yes. And since then, I've gotten quite a few pictures of them together. So now I'm speaking of the area that I go to. I don't know about anybody else's sightings.
Sure.
But I see them together enough where it makes you think, like, could they be related somehow? I mean, they're like brothers and sisters. They're so easy around each other. In fact, I have a picture of a Dogman and a Sasquatch hiding behind a tree stump, a fallen tree.
Okay.
And there's one little branch in between the camera and them. And they're both trying to hide behind this little branch, and they got their heads together.
Wow.
And you can zoom in, you can see one's a Sasquatch, and the other one, I think, is a Dogman.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, that's not what most traditional beliefs are about it. So it's interesting. Now, I have heard references of them living in concert with each other as well. So I can't say it's absolutely unheard of, but you don't hear that version of it very often. So I think that's fantastic. First of all,
Yeah.
I guess rather than being rivals, working together probably works better for the propagation of the entire community, but rather than being at war with each other. Going back to the one print, you said you had discovered prints, and then you had found, or your wife had found, a 3-toed print.
Yes.
Now, did that look more canid, or did it look like a Bigfoot with just 3 toes?
It looked like a Bigfoot with 3 toes.
Okay, so it was still that humanoid type print.
There were canid prints around it, but I think there was a regular dog. Somebody walked up there.
Oh, okay, I got
They
you.
were small.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's really interesting too, because there are of course plenty of claims out there. I think Momo from Missouri, I don't know, it's a very shaggy Bigfoot type of creature, but it was purported to have 3 toes, and I don't know about the Falk monster, if maybe that was too, but I've heard that definitely comes up, and it makes you wonder: is it some kind of branch in the tree where some of them have 3 toes, but traditionally speaking, they're most likely to have 5 toes? And you think, well, it could be some inbreeding going on. I don't know how that works. I think inbreeding generally produces more of something than less, but certainly those are some of the thoughts on it. And I'm no biologist. I don't really remember, but I think that's interesting to find a 3-toed print alongside of, 5-toed prints in that same region.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure that I have at least one other 3-toed print, and I also have a picture of a divergent toe print.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Which is, in 10 years, I've only found one of those.
Huh.
But it was a juvenile with a divergent toe, like a chimpanzee.
Yeah, or a gorilla. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty. That's probably much better for climbing.
Much better, yeah.
And you got to wonder if as you suggest, if they are related, maybe some of these anomalies are due to them having a similar enough genetic code that they could interbreed. And that might create some of these, like the divergent toe and the 3 toes and things like that. That's an interesting take as well. So, I mean, who can know? Again, these subjects don't lend themselves to rigorous study. And so it's just throwing ideas into the wind here, but it's just something to consider. So this all just kind of landed in your lap. And did you find that after that 6-month period, you mentioned that you really didn't get much? It seemed like they were, if they were there, they were actively avoiding the cameras. What do you think changed that suddenly they started to be, was it the familiarity with you in that area and, you know, your scent on equipment, do you suppose that they were like, well, that's just Gene's cameras, there's nothing to worry about? Or do you have any ideas about that?
Well, like I say, I've gotten things on the camera, but they tend to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
But once in a while, I think I'm surmising again now.
Sure, absolutely.
That some of the older ones that are probably with the younger ones at night and are saying, don't be afraid of that, you know, that camera up there. And they go up and they'll put their face in it, you know, but they won't stand out and, you know, 10 feet away and say, look, I'm here. They won't do that.
Sure.
But I got to say, there's one time when I had my camera set at 6 feet high because I had to reach up. I'm 5'9". I had to reach up to change the card in the camera.
Okay.
And it was right at dawn, so it wasn't totally light yet. It was just starting to get light. And for some reason, the camera didn't catch up. I think it malfunctioned or something. And so, however it works, I don't think there was a light on to let them know that the camera's working, because I had this figure walk by the camera, and he's probably 2 feet above the camera. And time goes by, and then toward the end of the video, which is I think 30 seconds back then, it would walk back. So it wasn't just a fluke. It walked this way and then that way, and it's got to be at least 2 feet above that.
Wow, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
So as you're doing this, are you ever feeling uncomfortable with going into this region and spending long, you know, amounts of time just kind of posting and waiting? Do you ever feel like unwelcomed in these areas, or do you think they've kind of just accepted your presence?
No, I never feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I think they have accepted me. Like they know, oh, there's that guy. You know, I used to have an orange backpack, which was waterproof. So I carried that for years. And I think they associated me with that backpack.
Oh, sure.
Because I used to wear that, and then I was going up to change the card in my camera one day. Mm-hmm. And I got up there, and the rain came down, Brent, and I'm telling you, it was like a monsoon. And there was no other cars in the parking lot. I was the only guy there. And I was walking up this wide trail, and I knew if I walked up the trail, it was one of the branch trails to the left. My camera's in there. Now, I set it in a different season. I set it, you know, when it was no foliage. Mm-hmm. So I went up there and I looked at this camera, and the rain's coming down, and I could not find it. I kept walking back out to the main trail, walking down. Is it this trail? Probably half an hour, back and forth. Finally, I get in there, and I couldn't take the rain anymore. Yeah. I said, I got to leave, come back another day. So I walk out of the trail. I turn onto that main trail, and I head toward where the car is parked. And I walked probably 50 feet, mm-hmm. and there was like a small dinner plate size rock, flat rock that was buried in the mud in the trail. And on the middle of that was a freshly killed mole with a freshly green leaf underneath it. Like a gift. Now, I got to say, the reason every time I went up there to change my cards, I would leave beef jerky or something on the trail cams. Okay. So I'm thinking, that wasn't there. I walked this trail 5 times at least. That wasn't there. Wow. Now, all of a sudden, this mole is freshly killed. It's wet. And it's got the green leaf on it like a garnish. So I looked at it and took a picture of it, and I said, to this day, I feel bad that I didn't at least pick it up like I was going to take it home and eat it.
Oh, sure.
Because I probably insulted them.
Right.
So I just left it. But that was my first thought, like, I think they're friendly. I'm leaving stuff for them. They're leaving stuff for me.
Right.
So, yeah, that's happened quite a few times since then.
That's fascinating. When you were having, you said you trust your intuition, and you felt like you were guided. Do you think it's possible, and I realize this is wild speculation, but sometimes people talk about, mind speak with these creatures or these beings. I don't want to say creatures because I don't mean to diminish them, but these beings seem to have at least the potential for telepathic communication. Do you think that might have been them guiding you?
Well, the question is, why would they want me to see them?
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't think so.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
But it's possible. Like I say, it's my mind's open.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm just on the outside looking in here, but it's just kind of neat. You know, I believe in intuition very much too. It's been a big part of my life and trusting that. So I really respect that. But it just occurred to me. It's like, well, maybe they kind of, had an idea of who you were and that you were okay. So, I mean, even Les Stroud on his Survivor Man Bigfoot series talked about how he was, what he believed getting mind speak, that they were on a different ridge than he was. But if he wanted to see them, he would have to wait till the next night or something like that. And he kind of opted out of that. But it's interesting. Have you ever experienced anything like mind speak in all of this decade of looking into the phenomena?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't think I have. No.
Yeah,
No.
and it's hard to, I don't know if it's, some people claim it's exceptionally recognizable. Like, it's not your voice. It's like a weird voice in your head that you've never heard before. But how about infrasound? Have you ever experienced anything like that?
No.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, Brent, I told you earlier what I did for a living
Yes, sir.
when I was still working. So I was a stuntman for 40 years or 42 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been many times where I was standing on top of a building in Times Square, Manhattan, and I was about to do a high fall into Times Square. And that voice would tell me something like, correct this, do that. And I've always listened to it, and it's always paid off when I listen to it. So when I get that voice in my head, I listen to it.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah, because in that career, to not listen to those intuitions would be fatal. Yeah.
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 That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So, what do you how many of these things do you think might be up there in this region where you're checking them out?
Oh,
Do you have an idea?
I'm going to get people shaking their head when I say it.
Sure.
I hesitate, but this area's got, I call it sections.
Okay.
Because there is a road going down the middle of it. Call it for fire or whatever. And there's a couple lakes. So maybe it's a fire road in case there is a fire. I don't know. But so I came up with sections.
Okay.
Now, what I think is when the male adults get too old, they go to their own section. They start their own family over there. So I've only explored probably 3 sections. There's probably 6 or more. I've only explored maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Okay.
And I would say, based on the photographs I've gotten, there's got to be conservatively between 50 and 100 of them.
Wow.
There's that many. And there's more dogmen than Sasquatch.
That is fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
And I don't say that lightly because I know a lot of people are going to shake their heads saying, I'm trying to get a sighting of 1. Now you're telling me there's that many up there? I'm telling you, I've been going here for 10 years. They're there.
sure. And I
They
think,
live there. They don't commute anywhere. They live there.
okay. No, that was going to be another question I was going to ask you is, some people believe that they have pretty expansive ranges for any family group, and they compare it to like a grizzly, that they can have hundreds of miles, that they kind of do this circuit throughout the year, depending on their, the needs. I was wondering if you'd noticed that behavior in this area.
No.
Okay.
No, I've gone up there day and night, different times of the year. They're always there. And I get almost all my interactions during the day. Against what most people say. They go out at night. You can see better during the day. You're at a disadvantage at night.
Yeah.
They can see you just fine, but you can't see them too well.
Right.
So I get most of my sightings during the day.
That's fascinating.
And
too.
I think with the because I rarely see adults,
Mm-hmm.
so I think there is a place they have, I call it home for them. And I think what the female adult's job is too, is to pump out as many kids as they can to keep the species going.
Sure.
Because what these things do, the small ones I'm talking about now, is they hunt at night. Now, there are people up there sometimes till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm sure it's 1, 2 o'clock on till daylight. They're hunting at that time.
Okay.
But during the day, the juveniles are set. They got their spots, hollowed out trees, sometimes, I mean, off the trail, so you can't really see them unless you look for them. Hollowed out trees, in tree branches. I get pictures of them sleeping.
Wow.
And some of them are awake watching. Some of them are sleeping. So I think that's where they sleep during the day.
Wow.
So I don't, for the longest time, I thought, I don't know if they have a place they call home.
Sure.
But the adults have to go somewhere.
Right. Do you have...
I've yet to find that.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a great question. I know the Olympic project, and I'm sure you're probably a little familiar with that at least, but they've, of course, discovered these, looks like nesting regions where they maybe go to have their youngs in these huckleberry nests that they've rudimentarily woven together, which is very consistent with great apes behavior. So have you ever found anything like that? And even in Ohio, the Ohio grassman, these big grass nests, have you ever found anything like that in this area?
The only thing I found is off trail again, because
Sure.
I've never seen anybody else walk off trail there but me.
Okay.
There's big signs when you pull up to this parking area that says, please stay on the trails. And then there's a sign next to it saying rattlesnake habitat.
Oh.
So most people will not go off the trail.
Right.
But I do. I put on my snake gaiters, whatever I have to do.
Sure.
So one time I was walking off trail and I saw what I call a lean-to. And it was the size for a juvenile, maybe to catch sleep during a day. And it would just break up the outline of it laying on the ground. Mm-hmm. It was just sticks broken off and laying against a tree like a half or 3/4 of a teepee.
Right.
And it would just sleep in there.
Interesting.
That's the only thing I can remember finding.
Is there a lot of game in this area too then?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
With that, when you're talking about that population size, of course, I'm thinking, well, wouldn't they burn through like all the undulates and stuff, in a given region? How big is this region?
Well, I don't want to say exactly,
Sure.
because somebody might find it out, but it's acres wise, it's under 500 acres.
Okay, but that's still pretty significant, though. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's broken up into different areas. But
Right.
I got to tell you, it made me think of it. What the adults will do during a day, they will hang dead deer in the trees, and they'll leave a marker, because when I walk around up there, I take pictures of everything.
Okay.
If I see for example, I've just recently found a branch that was probably an 8-inch tree that was broken, and so it looked like an A without this part,
Yep.
just like that. And beyond that, I blew up my picture beyond that, and you could see deer hanging in a tree.
Wow.
So I've gotten that 4 or 5 times, and I mentioned it to a very well-known anthropologist, I think he is.
Okay.
And I said, what could do that besides a big cat or a Sasquatch?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and says, a human could do it. I said, let me explain something to you. You got a big tree here, there's maybe 40 feet between them, 50 feet between them. So the branches intermingle. In the middle, where the branches are intermingling, this deer is hanging. Its leg is weaved through the branches and it's hanging.
Wow.
I said, first of all, how would a human get those branches down to the ground to tie up the deer, to let the branches take it back up?
Right.
It's impossible. But I knew I was fighting a losing battle. So I said,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, fair
So
enough. Now,
I have found that.
I'm sorry.
I got to tell you too that recently I found another shot of a deer in a tree, and I blew it up. And Brent, I swear to God, there was a creature coming out of the belly. It was gutted, and there was something coming out of the belly,
Oh, wow.
and it didn't have hair on it.
What do you
So
make of
I don't know
that?
what it was. Infant,
Oh, okay.
possibly.
Okay.
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Jeez. How high up are these deer? I mean, in a matter of feet, would you say?
30, 40 feet.
Oh my God. Yeah. Nobody's going to hang a deer 30 feet up into a tree. Not
And who's got the strength to do it?
right. And why would you put it that high? I mean, you keep it out of the reach of, like coons and maybe black bear and stuff, but 30 feet is exceptionally exhausting.
Yeah.
I can't see anybody doing that. Then you're
Well,
just feeding the birds.
I always think, could it be a bear? Could it be this? Could it be that? I always try to rule everything else out.
Sure.
And that's what I came up with, especially when I saw that creature coming out of the belly.
Yeah, that's very, very weird.
And you can see it. I have 2 pictures of the deer gutted, and it looks like they did it with a laser.
Really?
It's so clean.
Oh,
Yeah, and you can see the guts.
oof. It's almost
So-
like the Predator, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the question is, what do they do with all those carcasses when they're picked clean? I've never found skeletons on the ground.
Mm.
So I'm thinking possibly there's 2 bodies of water. Possibly they throw the bones in the water
Oh,
to
sure.
hide them. Because that would be just one section alone, figure at least 2 deer a night, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add up all these sections, that's a lot of deer.
Yeah, it is.
But they got to hide it somewhere.
Does this region have like any natural cave systems? Is it part of the geography up there?
Not that I know of, and I've never found one.
Okay. Because of course, some people would like to say that they're perhaps subterranean, and I think that stands to reason, at least a possibility. But if you're not familiar with there being natural caves and known caves in the area, then maybe that's not as likely. I don't know. But then there again, if they did have a cave, certainly that might be where the bones are.
Could be, but they've got to take all those deer carcasses to the cave.
Right, and maybe that's what they do. Maybe they hang them to. I mean, again, it's wild speculation, but maybe they hang them to kind of bleed them out and I don't know, drain them, and then after they're ready, they bring them down to wherever that might be, and that might be where they're consumed. It's just hard to say. But,
Maybe I never thought of that. But
sure.
But then, how do you explain the thing coming out of its belly?
Those darn kids.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the people mention how smart they are,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm telling you that the juveniles can be outsmarted because they don't know what technology is.
Sure.
So if you get yourself a good camera, I have a camera with 125 optical zoom,
Wow. Okay.
and once I locate one with my cell phone camera, because that has a digital zoom on it, but at least I can see, there's something I should look at closer.
Mm-hmm.
I zoom in with my big camera, and I get a better shot. But most of the time, they are behind leaves, behind branches, but you can see the outline. And some people have looked at my pictures before and say, that's pareidolia.
Oh, yeah.
And my answer to that is, how is it pareidolia when you have at least 50, maybe 100 pictures of the same subjects,
Sure.
the same symmetrical ears, sometimes nose shine on it, sometimes eye shine. That's not pareidolia,
Right.
especially when I have full shots of them laying down or whole body.
Mm-hmm.
So you put it all together, they're there.
Yeah, I mean that does certainly lend a lot of credibility, and I would direct people to look into the Freeman footage, because Paul Freeman took some amazing footage back in the 90s and caught some great stuff. But there's one part that's pretty well outlined in the Freeman Files book, and that is this combination of frames that was grabbed, and I think Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Michael kind of and perhaps Doug Hijack of Monster Quest and his new podcast and stuff, they kind of dug into this and found some frames where literally by the Bigfoot moving back, it disappears. Now it's just so perfectly blended in that your eye just loses it. They are so good. They are masters of their domain. And then it takes a step out, when they go backwards and forwards, it's like, God, you can't even tell where it is. And then, oh, there it is. It just comes out of nowhere. So I don't know personally what to do with things like the cloaking and the portal ideas with these subjects. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I don't understand that. And it's hard to wrap my head around, but I don't ever say anything's impossible. But certainly when they are, these beings are in natural ghillie suits. So, if you think of like a Marine recon sniper or something, they're absolutely invisible until they want to be visible. And I think it's very true for these things.
Yeah. Well, think of this. Did you ever see one of those hidden object puzzles?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I liken it to that because if you look at a puzzle, most people, including myself, most of the time don't see the object.
Right.
Now, if you turned around in your chair and they took the object that you're looking for and they put it over here and they showed you the object without the puzzle,
mm-hmm.
and then you stayed looking that way and they put it back in the puzzle, if you turned around, you could find out within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because you know what you're looking for.
Right.
That's how it is with them and me.
I think that's a brilliant correlation because I've heard that from several people, like Bear from the Bigfoot Outlaws back in the days. Like, you got to learn how to see them, how to look for them, because
mm-hmm.
we're traditionally we look for silhouettes. I mean, we just have very, very basic recognition. But when you're in the wilds and stuff, it's like a hunter knows how to look for the deer. They've learned what to look for, how to see them in their camouflage and stuff. And so I think the same is very much true for the Bigfoot and Dogman perhaps as well. So that's a great point. They are very good at what they do, but once you understand what they do and how to look for that, maybe they become blindingly obvious,
Yeah, and to address the cloaking idea,
mm-hmm.
I was in the area I call 3. There's a wide stream that runs down the side of it, and it was a very windy trail. And through one of the bends in the trail, I looked through a spot in the foliage, maybe this big, and I looked through there and I could see something with gray and black hair. And as soon as I locked eyes on that, it looked at me.
Wow.
And it immediately started, it bent down and turned, I could see it starting to turn around. So if it could cloak, it would just poof and be gone.
Yeah, right.
But this thing ducked down and went the other way, and I was there in 5-7 seconds,
mm-hmm.
could not find him.
Wow.
Could not find him. I looked all over, in the bushes, could not find him.
Huh.
As I walked down the trail, I heard bird calls, and I had to laugh. I'm standing by myself like, that's not a bird. That's not a bird. So somebody's trying to imitate a bird.
Sure.
Tell somebody something, and it wasn't a bird. I could not see him.
That's amazing. And, I hear that about them mimicking owls, and people say it sounds like about a 500-pound owl. It's like, ooh, ooh. So, yeah, that's interesting that you point that out too. It's like, that's not a bird. I know what this is. Very true.
I've got a picture that unfortunately, I looked at this later on when I got home,
mm-hmm.
and I blew it up. But I'm taking a picture, and there's a tree that's almost on the edge of the frame. And I expanded it so I could see a little more of it. And way up here, you could see a juvenile Sasquatch clinging to the tree,
wow.
just being silent while I'm standing right next to it. And you can see the eyes, and you can see the hands and the feet wrapped around the tree.
Yeah.
You can't see 100% of the body, but you can see that much. That's how quiet they are.
Yeah, yeah. There's no question they are exceptional in their own domain. Just like, you can traverse from wherever you are to your bathroom and kitchen without missing a beat. Well, as we were talking about before the show, I think that this is their domain. This is their home, and they know it backwards, forwards, left, right, everything. They know nooks and crannies and stuff. And when you look at people, we know trails. We stick on trails and places that it's easy to walk most often. I mean, there's certainly those people that like to rough hike and they go wherever they choose to, and that's exceptional as well. But most people, 90, 95, 99% of the population would just stick to the trails. That's how we're conditioned. So, but these things are, they live in the trees, they live in the wilds, in the forest, in even their gait. When you look at like the Patterson-Gimlin film, that's a gait that's developed by something that's used to raising its legs up enough not to trip.
I'm glad you said that, because I thought of that and I said, people are going to think that's silly, but that's true.
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
did you ever walk to the woods and put the front of your foot down first?
No.
How much quieter that is?
Oh, yeah.
So there's reasons for everything.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I think when you hear recordings of howling in the background, like a guy in his camper or something, I'm always picturing a Bigfoot walked into a rock and stubbed his toe. And they're screaming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You never know, right?
Right, you never know. The other thing I think is kind of funny is when and I'm not poking fun of anybody, but I've just thought that wouldn't it be funny if, like, when you're duplicating the Ohio howl, the that was made famous, I think mostly by like Finding Bigfoot, but you might be saying, hey, I got a bad rash or something.
Yeah,
that might be Bigfoot for Phil's not feeling well, stay away or whatever. You don't know.
I got bit by a snake. Yeah.
Yeah, who put that log there? That kind of thing.
Right.
So it is funny, but obviously this is incredible. One other question I want to ask you quickly before we wrap it up for today. Have there been, or are there any missing people tied to this area? I mean, specifically that you're aware of?
Not that I know. No.
Okay. Well, that's good. Because
and on certain days, this area is populated like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
Some days when there's nobody up there but me, and there's other days when there's guys on bicycles and whatever. And
sure.
There was one day when I was at a crossroads in a trail, and a guy in a bike came out, and I waved to him, and he stopped, and he goes, damn, this thing back there on the trail a little bit, I just saw a coyote.
Oh.
Well, you know what? I'll take that back. Maybe it wasn't a coyote, because maybe it was a wolf, because it was pretty big. I'm thinking that probably was not a wolf.
Yeah, you might not have seen a wolf, but something canid, as it were. But that's fascinating. Because, of course, I do think that there's the potential for the correlation between missing people and, being in the presence of some of these beings. But I'm certainly glad to hear that that's not the case where you are and where you're going, because that's absolutely scary to, consider that you might be on the menu. And maybe it's a regional thing. Maybe it's some, I don't know, any number of things. But thank goodness that was how about missing pets? Do a lot of people miss pets around there?
I don't really talk to people. I've seen people on the trail that live close.
Sure.
And I don't ask them questions like that, because they're going to think, well, what's up with that?
Sure.
But I have, on my trail cam, I've seen dogs running through the frame.
Oh, okay.
They look like puppy dogs. So I wouldn't doubt it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that certainly is a pretty consistent correlation to these things being in an area, is that people start losing their cats and their dogs, and it's like, where's Fluffy? Yeah. On every lamppost or whatever. So interesting stuff.
One guy did mention to me, he said, don't be in here overnight or at night. And at the time I'm thinking, what does he mean by that? Maybe he meant because they're out then.
Right.
Maybe he does know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the safest advice to give you without exposing himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Gene, this has been absolutely epic. I I love this discussion, and I know we've got a lot more ground to cover, and I hope you'll come back and we can dive more into this if you're willing.
I like to, because I like to tell you about, like I said, I've examined my photos later on.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the latest photos I examined, I looked at and I sat back in my chair and I called my wife in. I said, "What is that right there?"
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at it and she said the same thing I did.
Ooh.
And it was a skull. So if I'm correct, unless they made a mistake, they don't bury the dead.
Oh.
They hide their dead.
Ooh.
The problem with my camera, I don't have GPS on my camera.
Sure.
So I've got to try to find where that location was by just the picture.
Oh.
And the foliage is out now, so it's harder.
Sure.
When the foliage drops, I'm hoping to find it.
Wow.
But yeah, I can update you on that, because that would change everything.
Please do. I'd love to hear more about that and your continued experiences as you're continuing to dive into this. But it's been an awesome pleasure talking to you, sir, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences.
You're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful day, and we'll get you back on, and we'll dive deeper if we can.
Okay. Thanks, Brent.
All right. Thank you, Gene.